Contrary to popular belief, Agile methodologies are actually destroying digital transformations. How so? That's what I want to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach the third stage of digital transformation success. And Agile methodologies are all the rage right now. Most software vendors, if not all of them, are using at least a flavor of Agile implementation methodologies when they implement their new technologies. Most software vendors, if not all of them, are using some form of Agile methodologies, even if it's just a hybrid or a variation of Agile. So the question becomes, why is this such a big thing, and why is it such a problem, in my opinion, as it relates to digital transformations? So what I'll do today is I'll talk about, first of all, what Agile is and why it's such a big deal right now. And then I'll talk about why it creates unintended consequences or unintended problems for digital transformations. And most importantly, at the end of this video, I'll talk about what you can do about it and how you can leverage Agile where it makes sense, but not go too far into Agile where it doesn't make sense. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. Real quickly, I want to describe the difference between Agile and Waterfall. Waterfall is a traditional software development methodology where you have clear sequential milestones and checkpoints along the way. Agile, on the other hand, is more focused on speed to value. It's focused on implementing technology quickly and getting feedback quickly from your user group. And I'm not going to dive into all the nuances of Agile versus Waterfall, but if you'd like to learn more about what Agile is and how it's different from Waterfall, I encourage you to check out this video right here on my YouTube channel. That video is solely focused on just differentiating between the two to help you define which makes the most sense for you. But what I'll do here today instead is talk about why Agile has become such a big deal. And the reason Agile is such a big trend right now is because historically, ERP implementations and digital transformations have failed. Organizations have taken too long to get the value they wanted out of the system. They've spent too much money, too much time, too many resources, and in many cases, they don't ever get the business value they expect out of the system. So what software vendors have done in a smart way is said, well, if Waterfall might be the problem, then why don't we go with a faster Agile approach? And that's the mentality and sort of the pendulum swinging the other way. To add to this trend, there's another trend in the entrepreneurial community called lean startups and agile startups and minimum viable products. There's all these trends in the small business space that's focused on speed. How do we do things faster? How do we get products to market faster? How do we get a minimum viable product out there and then get feedback from customers? So there's two trends kind of happening in parallel that are fueling this focus on Agile and the focus on speed to value. And that's why Agile has become such a big part of digital transformations today. And it's also a great sales tactic because now software vendors can say, hey, I know our projects have failed in the past, and I know our projects have struggled in the past, but now we have an Agile methodology that'll solve the world's problems. So what I want to do in the rest of this video is talk about how Agile is not, in fact, solving the world's problems. And in many cases, it's creating new problems that we need to be aware of. One of the core tenets or philosophies as it relates to Agile is that we don't want to take a lot of time up front defining our business processes, defining our requirements, defining end-to-end business processes and workflows, because that takes time. It slows down the process of getting technology out there and getting speed to value. So what Agile does, it says we're not going to do that. We're just going to start deploying technologies. We'll find smaller problems throughout the organization and we'll deploy technology to fix it. And we'll get feedback from end users and then we'll tweak it and adopt it and pivot. And we keep going through this iterative cycle. Sounds fair enough, right? But the problem with this approach is most clients we work with, especially larger, complex, and multinational organizations, are trying to standardize their operations. They're trying to get a better view of their end-to-end business processes. They want to improve their end-to-end business processes, and they want to start acting like one company. They already have 10 or 15 or 20 different ways of operating. Now they're using this transformation as a way to say, we want to act like one company. We want to get efficiency gains from having standard business processes. We want to consolidate teams in some cases. So those things all point to the fact that we need to take the time up front to have a strategic direction and have a clear vision of what it is we want to get out of this project, rather than just simply deploying new technology and seeing what happens. So in order for us to have a truly strategic impact on our future state and where we end up as part of our digital transformation, we have to be sure not to take too much of an agile approach, especially early on in the project. We need to take that time up front to define the roadmap, the blueprint, the business process changes, the requirements, all that stuff, because that's what's going to enable us to get the benefits we expect. Now, once we get to the implementation of technology after that, then we can start to introduce agile concepts. I'm going to come back to that point later in this video, but the key is you don't want to start off with a full-on agile approach out of the gates if your goal is to standardize operations or to consolidate operations and to get true end-to-end business value out of your transformation. I talked a moment ago about how Agile doesn't necessarily support the need for strategic direction and focusing on what you want to be when you grow up. And I want to focus a little bit more on that and peel that back a little bit more and talk about business processes, because business processes are one of the key focal points of any digital transformation. Most organizations are trying to improve their processes. They're trying to have some deliberate approach to how they create their new business processes, and they want to ensure that they actually roll out these new business processes as part of their transformation. If we create new technology and just put it in the hands of end users as fast as we can, that doesn't necessarily translate to new or better business processes. So taking the time up front to actually map out and sketch out your future state operating model, your end-to-end business processes, the way you're going to standardize or change the processes, how you're going to integrate processes, how you're going to organize the people around those business processes, that's all part of redesigning your organization and defining what the organization is going to look like in the future. And Agile doesn't necessarily support that. In fact, Agile runs counter to that concept, because if you think about it, what I'm advocating for is more that waterfall approach, where you take the time up front to define your end-to-end processes, define what you want your re-engineered processes to be, and then implement technologies behind that. Whereas Agile would probably flip that around and say, let's get technology out there and we'll use that as a way to educate ourselves and inform ourselves how we might improve and make our business better. Now, the other part of this too is if we're going to invest heavily in new technologies, which most organizations are when they go through digital transformations, it's not enough to say we're just going to put the technology out there and see what happens and hope for the best and hope that we get business value out of it. Most organizations that our team works with in all countries of the world focus on how do we get business value. If we're going to invest X amount of money in technology, where's the business value? If we don't see the business value, then maybe we don't invest as much in the technology. In order to understand what the business value is, you have to understand what the business processes are going to be in the future and how they're going to change and how they're going to be improved. So all this is to say, you need that time up front, which is very anti-agile. You need that time up front to define your future state processes, your requirements, and the overall design of the organization and the operations. So if you've listened to this whole thing so far, you might think that I am completely against Agile. I hate Agile, never want to see it anywhere in digital transformation. Fortunately, that's not true. I do think there's value and merit in Agile, but only in moderation, just like anything. We don't want to double down and go all in on Agile when it doesn't make sense to our organization, but there are ways that we can leverage the value of an Agile mentality. And the key is, where do we use it? When do we use it? How often do we use it? And what's the right timing? That's the key thing. What's the timing for moving into more of an Agile approach? And just to generalize and to summarize, I would say the best way to think about it is if you treat your upfront planning and blueprinting stages of your digital transformation in a waterfall approach, that's going to make a lot of sense, especially if you then shift into an Agile approach. And when you shift into that Agile approach, that's where you can start to accelerate and speed things up. And that's where, by having that clear blueprint and that clear roadmap that you've defined in the upfront stages of your project, that's actually going to enable a better Agile approach that goes faster later on. In fact, I would argue if you took two exact same projects in parallel, run one that's fully Agile, run the other one that starts Waterfall, then moves to Agile, the one that starts Waterfall and moves to Agile, I would argue, is going to be implemented a lot faster and deliver value a lot faster than the other scenario where you start with Agile. And the reason for that is if you start with Agile, you're sort of going in circles and you're meandering through your project and experimentation and all that stuff that ultimately will take more time and money than if you just took the time to plan and create a clear roadmap up front before you shifted it into Agile mode. So that's one way to look at it, is start with Waterfall, move to Agile later on. Now, there are a couple scenarios where I would say maybe Agile does make sense from the start. One would be if you're a high growth organization. If you're a fast growing, fast moving technology or a younger company, chances are pretty high that even if you wanted to take a waterfall approach and take that time to define business processes and requirements up front, you wouldn't be able to, because it's like a moving target. You're growing and changing so fast that it doesn't make sense to start off with a waterfall approach. Agile is actually going to serve you a lot better. That's where you want to leverage Agile from the start, because as the company evolves and changes, you can be baking technology into those changes along the way. The other scenario where we see Agile work really well, even in larger organizations, is if you're focused on innovation. If your technology initiative or part of your technology initiative is focused on creating innovative processes and new ways of thinking, those parts of your transformation are very well suited for Agile. So let me start by saying what isn't innovative. If you're implementing a back office accounting system, for example, that's not an innovative use of technology. It might be needed, but it's not innovative. That's a scenario where you probably want to take more of a traditional waterfall and then Agile approach. But if you're talking about, for example, artificial intelligence, an emerging technology that none of us fully understand yet, and organizations certainly haven't figured out how they're going to use AI yet, that's a great candidate for an Agile approach, because we don't know enough about AI and how it could be used in order to create these new business processes. But if we put the technology in people's hands and run some pilots and do some innovative experiments in how we could improve our operations, that's a very Agile approach. So with those newer emerging technologies and the focus on innovation, or those parts of your business that are very innovative, that might be a good candidate for more of an Agile approach. So the bottom line here is Agile can be good, but it can also be bad. It can be helpful, but it can also be destructive. And we need to understand when and where and how to use Agile, and hopefully I've conveyed some ideas on how to do that here today. Now, if you'd like to learn more about digital strategies and ways to make your project more successful, I encourage you to read our Digital Transformation Report. It's an annual report that we publish each year that highlights a number of best practices, tips, and lessons learned from digital transformations throughout the world, as well as some independent reviews and rankings of different technologies that you might want to consider for your organization. So I hope you found this information useful, and hope you have a great day. Agile methodology, no, let me say that again. Starting with Agile, you're signing, wow, can't talk. Where am I? Where are we?
It's in this hallway.
Exactly. Why are we here?